But what draws me to documentary is partly the educational essence of documentary film, and accompanying that, the possibility to think about what new forms of circulation can exist.
It was very striking how you've been focusing, Raoul, on Black heroes or fallen heroes, on individual trajectories that again resonate, collective fight, let's say, and emancipation quest. I'd like to know how your view on that has evolved. If you, I believe you still have faith in the power of the narrative, but I was wondering, how your faith actually in the possible agency of this kind of narrative has evolved throughout the years.
I wish I could use the word faith, or sometimes people ask me, are you optimist or a pessimist? And for the sake of my sanity, I never use those words, because there is nothing really that gives you what you would call hope. Otherwise you would be tired, you would be vanquished. I just see it as something you need to do. I used to say I have no choice. In order to exist, I have to do those things. And each film I make, and maybe when you create, it's the same. You have to do several things at the same time. You have to preserve the past, because nobody have written your past. When I'm confronted with all these pictures taken by colonialism, how do I find the humanity in those photos when the view, the gaze of that the person who took the picture was embedded in colonialism? He had the power. He could shoot that photo of the victim. So how do you find the humanity of that person in that photo? So I had to learn to decipher that. I had to learn to make choices, and one of the trick is always to choose photos where the subject is looking at the camera. And then there you can catch something. And so I have to preserve that. I have to deconstruct. I have to retell the story. And I have also to be engaged in the fight now where I am, or where whatever is on the front. And you have to find the film, the subject, the approach that enables you to have those different layers. I could do that with Baldwin, because you can read any essays of Baldwin. It's like it's happening today. His analysis is point on everything that is happening today. Watching Cole, words of in House of Bondage, you can read about South Africa today. There is inequality in South Africa right now, and to a point where you say, wow, we fought for this. And so, and you can relate to Gaza, to Kiev, to all these places of war and people dying. So it's a film, a subject, a context that enables you to access to all those thoughts, to question you, to bring you to yourself now. That's, the means for me why I make films.
Yeah, you were talking about student movements. Actually, we can see them very alive over the world, across borders right now for Gaza. So some disappeared, but some, have been revived. So let's forget about the term faith, and let's go back maybe to agency, power, and also, the concern of the objective to talk to the mass, or to have access to as many people as it's possible with one's films or one's books or one's exhibitions. While preparing this conversation, the specter of Stuart Hall was very much present, and also Ousmane Sembène, who just switched from books to films because it was a better way to actually have access to lots of people around the world, and especially in this case to Africa. But so, Dominic, when you've been working and actually inventing new educational ways through cinema and with cinema, could you maybe explain us what you've been building in the institutions where you were working to bring the public to also let's say art house cinema, and what was your work and power, I believe.
Well, first of all, with Stuart, Stuart, explored all these different forms, but he would say that fundamentally he was an educator, and so he was a great figure for lots of us in the UK in those years, and fondly remembered. But the link into your question, I think, is that of what form, what apparatus do you choose in order to not just reach the public you want to reach, but generate the public you want to generate? We have these words of public, and publicness in our blurb for our session here, and also commons, which is a different thing, which we could make a distinction there if we wish to. But a work of art creates its own public, and publics are sometimes in a space, and sometimes they're spatial, and that's typically an exhibition is an example of that, and sometimes they're temporal. It's about circulation. Novels are about circulation, and there's wonderful writing. I think of Michael Warner's theorizations from 20 years ago, public and counterpublics, to do with the politics of circulation. Yeah. So for me, part of what draws me into documentary film now, of course, I have a history with film programming, certainly not with film production or distribution. But what draws me into documentary is partly the educational essence of documentary film, and accompanying that, the possibility to think about what new forms of circulation can exist. It was interesting to me this morning, those of you who were there for the soapbox session that Doc Society hosted this morning, it was interesting how much alignment there was between the individuals who projected a vision of documentary film in 2035, I think. And so much of it was about the different kinds of spaces, physical and virtual, that might be, a lot of it was about money, but some of it was about different kinds of spaces that would need to exist. And it left me thinking about how, in order for documentary to occupy those spaces, we could be on the cusp of some kind of aesthetic revolution in what the documentary form is. And coming from a world in contemporary art, and you could say the same in music. Visual art now and music now is unrecognizable from 50 years ago. Documentary film isn't, in terms of what first comes to mind. So it would be, even if we need to go and build and find these alternative spaces, it might accompany kind of reinvention of documentary form, which could make this a very exciting decade and beyond.